Hello and welcome back to Predict It Live, only on Old Bull TV, your exclusive source for real-time coverage of the stock market for politics. And it is a red letter day for PredictIt traders. Polling markets are officially back. Could tweet markets be far behind? Yes, but we'll take what we can get. So let's get to it. I am your host, Flip Pideaux, and if you are new to PredictIt, we are setting viewers up with a $25 deposit match. That's free real cash in your trading account when you go to predictit.org/promo/oldbull25. If you're joining us live, please feel free to connect with us in the YouTube chat window. We'll see if we can take some of your questions live and in real time. And if you are catching us on the replay, feel free to reach out to us on Twitter at OldBullTV, where our DMs are always open. And finally, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel while you are here. And while you're doing that, I want to introduce you to a fabulous special panel that we have assembled today. We really put out the bat signal in response to this special event today. These polling markets, we really want to bring you up to speed on this former mainstay of the PredictIt market complex, because if you learn to trade these markets properly, they can be a source of regular, relatively low risk cash flow from PredictIt. So without further ado, let's meet our panel. On the left of your screen there, you see Base Level. You know him as Base from PI on Twitter and the PredictIt message boards. Base, how are you? It's your first time joining us. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Long-time viewer, first-time panelist. This is fun.
Now we're excited to have you in our virtual studio. And of course, returning, we've had him on a few times before, is Jason Pipkin. You may know him as Jipkin on Twitter and PredictIt message boards. He's also the proprietor of the site predictingpolitics.com, source of very useful and unique analysis and commentary on PredictIt markets. Jason, welcome back. Thanks for being here on this very special day.
Thanks for having me, Flip. It is a great day. I never thought it would happen, but the clouds have parted, and once again, the sun blesses us with polling markets.
That's right. And joining us also for the first time is Crunchwrap Supreme. He is in his official PredictIt headwear. He is the proprietor of the site pibucks.cash, which we can chat about a little bit, another useful resource for regular PredictIt traders. Crunchwrap, thank you for joining us. How are you?
Good, yeah. Well, just like Base, long-time viewer, first time on the show. Glad we could finally make it work.
Yeah, and what a day to be here. So glad to be welcoming some fresh blood to the panel. And let's see if we can help people make some money on this new, I shouldn't say new, but this newly resurrected market type. Folks that are new to PredictIt, even newish. I think it's been, a year, more than a year that these have been gone. But of course, we used to have tons of these on the site. If we can actually bring it up on the screen here so people can see what we're talking about if they haven't seen it yet. This market just got put up on the site within the last hour or so. PredictIt previewed it for us yesterday that this was coming today, and people have been kind of buzzing about it since. And if we can click through to that one on the top left, Biden's 538 approval on 622. So the way this works, from a high level here, this is basically a 7 bracket, 2.2 percentage point wide bracket market. It is weekly expiration, so it'll be next Tuesday. The market will actually settle at 10 a.m. on Wednesday. They're giving 538, the polling aggregator serving as the settlement source here, handful of hours into the day following the reference day to update any late published polls. But this is effectively for the daily update in the 538 average approval rating for President Biden as of 1 week from today. And assuming that they do it as they did in the past, we can expect this to be a weekly rolling over market. So, take us back a year plus ago, Jipkin, if you can, tell people a little bit about, the way that you approached and tried to make money off of, this, what used to be a really big part of the weekly PredictIt experience. But tell us how it would go week to week. What should you be looking at as you're trying to set up your brackets in a market like this?
Sure. So just to give the lay of the land, this is a market on what the 538 average says will be Joe Biden's approval at the end of a given day. And I think the day is June 22nd. And you have a bunch of brackets, and it's very daunting because they have these sort of narrow percentage range. Here they're 0.1 wide, which is pretty narrow. And as a new trader, you're looking at that and going, I have no clue what it's going to be 53.1 or 53.3 or whatever. And as an experienced polling market trader, I also have no clue what the final answer is going to be. So typically what I would do when approaching these is, think about what polls I know are going to come, when I expect them to come, and then what numbers they like to produce, how those numbers are adjusted by 538's methodology, which maybe we'll get into in a bit, and then start making educated guesses. My advice, if you are new and you've never played a polling market before, is to not trade more than 10 shares in any bracket at any time, and maybe even just go for negative risk, 10 shares of no, and every bracket spread out across. You can catch probably 2 brackets at 35 cents no, I bet, if you wait long enough. There's going to be a lot of volatility in polling. And my other piece of advice, if you're new and you're playing yes side, is to almost always sell at 90. This is a good ICE average market. Until you really know what you're doing and you know that you can hold above 90, don't do it, because these are markets where you can lose money quickly because of something unexpected. People look at me and the polling market veterans as though like you have to like master all these web tricks and get all these inside details and have it all locked down in order to succeed at these. But truthfully, like speaking for myself, I probably lose the most money of any market type in polling markets, but I love them anyway. So, be cautious and then try and decide if you think he's going up, he's going down, or if he's staying flat.
All right, Base, what do you think here? That's a mixed review from Jip. He says he has fun playing these even if he loses, but hoping that will arm traders to win more than they lose on these, or at least I would assume that they would find it more fun if they're able to eke out a little bit of a profit. So what advice do you have for new traders, seasoned traders, anyone thinking about dipping their toe into this resurrected market series?
So these are fantastic markets to work in a strategy of betting on movement as opposed to trying to predict to be right. As Jip said, always sell at 90. That rule was birthed in Obama approval markets. These are markets that really can change at the drop of a hat, last minute, the night before closure, something along those lines. But there's usually a lot of movement within these markets. They're 0.2 wide, Chip, not 1. But yeah, I did a great job of doing very tight brackets because 538 is more stable. They do a lot of weighting and adjustments to their polls to make sure things sort of fall into a norm. So tight brackets like this really will see a lot of movement, and from at least my own experience, a lot of the profitability comes not from being right, but the trading in the 6 days leading up to the expiry of the weekly market. Things start to move upwards, and you hold 2 or 3 brackets above the average, and you're selling each of those for a 10 or 15 cent profit. That's fantastic. You don't have to be right. You just have to sort of get ahead of some of the movement. It doesn't hurt to follow polls a little more closely, follow your traditional pollsters. It has been over a year, so it's time to blow the dust off of the TweetDeck and Page Monitor and what have you, and you are monitoring all of your standards. Polls come out. We have weekly polls, monthly polls, and then the whenever they feel like it character.
So actually, Base, I think you froze up on us.
Polls in history. Oh, goodness.
There you are. Go ahead. You're back. Go ahead.
Sorry. I was just saying that 538 does a wonderful job of hosting the history of all of the polls that are into the average. So you can scroll through and looking at the history, get something of a feel for who's weekly, who's daily, which we're down to just RAS for daily, but who's daily, who's weekly, who's monthly, and then who is the whenever they feel like it pollsters. And that gives you a good idea to be able to track what's coming and a little bit of what's expected. Because the trend lines within each pollster are usually something you can at least have a rough idea of. So
Crunchwrap, jump in here. I know you, as the operator of PIBucks.cash, you are one of these guys who sort of tracks the data influencing market, serial markets on PredictIt. And when the tweet markets were up, for instance, you used to track those. But you also track something that Jip mentioned on negative risk. So I think your site will sort of automatically show you when there are markets with negative risk. In other words, riskless free arbitrage you can make by simply going out and buying no on all the market on all the brackets in a linked market when they get overvalued. I think Jason was talking more about kind of here strategic entry into the different brackets. You can see when they pop, you can sort of short them opportunistically and possibly build a larger over time, a larger negative risk portfolio. But as someone who's maintained a site like this, what tools do you like to use specifically for polling? Are there good aggregators out there specifically that look at this from a PredictIt perspective, how to sort of track and understand both the movement and the timing and the impact, the actual calculated numerical impact of a new poll hitting the 538 average? Because as both the other panelists mentioned here, this is not simply or even primarily necessarily about trying to predict is Biden's popularity or approval heading north or south, but really understanding the methodology and timing both of the component pollsters and 538 that ultimately is the settlement source here. So what does your dashboard look like as you're trying to kind of handicap the brackets here a week out or a day out? How would you be looking at this throughout the course of the week?
Yeah, well, the reason I love polling markets like these, just there's so many different ways to trade them. You can. So obviously, neg risk is a great way to do it. Earlier in the week, usually you can lock in some good prices on some brackets. People like lottos, so you can get some cheap brackets on shares that you think are not going to happen at all. Like look at the history, look how often it goes up or down 5%, and you could say, okay, this is never happened before. Or it's happened one time. We can lock in some neg risk here, and towards the end of the market, you can have a pretty sizable position. If you're watching it and you're watching when brackets get pumped and other people move into markets and they're like, oh, this is going to hit, even though it's not likely at all. You can lock in $20-$30 a week, easy, not even trying, just neg risk. Watching sites like PieBucks.cash, which shows you, like you were saying, real time, shows you the neg risk counter. But there's also the different skill levels. You can get pretty crazy with these markets. I remember during the primary polling markets, people were, they'd figured out how to hack the URLs for polling markets for polling sites. So you knew CNN used a certain format when they would generate new polls, and they hinted on Twitter oh, we got a new poll dropping. So you're just kind of spamming those URLs. You know what their pattern is, and there's people who are really good at it, and they can make a lot of money. So there's two ways to trade these markets. You can try and predict the future, or you can try and be the fastest guy on the punch. Maybe you have TweetDeck open, or maybe you have a web crawler going when you're trading tracking all these pages. That a certain site's gonna pop a poll. You're gonna watch that site refresh every 5 seconds. So neither strategy is better than the other, but if you can be the fastest one on the gun, it doesn't take a lot of skill level to refresh the page a bunch of times and just stare at it. So it's great. It's great markets because it offers a wide range of strategies and ways to use your time to get ahead of everyone else, or just to place some buy orders and hope you get hit and lock in some good neg risk every week. And these are definitely great markets.
Yeah, I think that's why people are so excited about it. Obviously, on Twitter, on the message boards, there's been a lot of buzz over the last, whatever it's been, 24 hours, not quite, since they announced these were coming back. And as you put, I think that's a big part of it, too. There are a lot of ways to play it. So there's a lot of ways to potentially win money. There's a lot of ways to lose money, too. But there's likely a niche for you here if you put in the time to study these markets and how the prices react and how you can build whether it's a negative risk portfolio or ride these swings up and down, or just get really good at anticipating the timing of the different polling releases and see if you can ride some of those movements across the course of the week. Can we pull up real quick the 538 page that this is actually tied to? How popular or unpopular is Joe Biden? So this is scrolled down a little bit. This is the actual component polls, and this is what I wanted to to look at to get into this a little bit more explicitly. You can see here the different all the different national polls that are used to calculate the 538 average, which is currently 53.0%. And again, you got to nail this to within that 2 percentage point range, 53 to 50. What is it? 53.1 to 53.2, or the one that would currently resolve in is 52.9 to 53.0. Obviously, the trading on this is pretty thin so far, but thus far it seems like people are expecting it to move a little bit higher. But you can see on 538 that it's actually stayed pretty stable within the course of the last week. I think it hasn't been below 53.0 or above 53.2. So it's a little more stable on 538 than, for instance, if you just look at Real Clear Politics tracking the exact same thing, whether it's because 538 uses more polls or because of the methodology that they use to sort of maybe not smooth, but they weight pollsters based on 538's own partly subjective evaluation of how good the pollsters are. So that may lead to some smoothing. This is a relatively stable average, and yet small deviations can cause it obviously to jump from one bracket to the other, and could be, and in fact in the past often has been, right up against resolution settlement time, where you'll see a flip out of one bracket to another. And that was why Jason was also mentioning the ICE average rule of always sell at 90. In these markets, you can see those flips from 90 to 0, from 10 to 100 to 10 to 99. Right at the finish line. But looking again at this table of polls, base, I think it was mentioned that the one remaining pollster that we have that does a daily tracker is Rasmussen. And I want to ask you guys too, because I was trying to figure this out looking at this table. They do mention also one of the ways that 538 weights the pollsters is by frequency. So if in other words, they downweight the more frequently you poll. I think as long as you're more than once every 20 days. Rasmussen is a daily tracker, but if you look here, I only see it appearing. You got June 10th to 14th, and the next one before that is June 2nd to June 6th. June 7th to 9th, then 2nd to 6th, and then May 30th to June 1st. So it does seem that they are not using all of the Rasmussen daily numbers. Is that the way they downweight? Basically, to just only use maybe every other? Or
they are using all of them.
On missing Rasmussen. They are using all of them?
Yeah, they do use they use them daily. It's a matter of which ones they allow to leave into the average, because 538 computes the average, not like RCP used to, where it was these are the ones in the average and these are historicals, but they have no bearing on the number. 538 actually takes into account historical polls that they are de-weighted the further behind they get. So for 538, they keep a certain number. Chip, you might know better than I do.
The source of Flip's confusion here is that Rasmussen is a daily poll, but it's a rolling 3-day window. So today is Tuesday. So this is the poll from like Thursday, Friday, and Monday, or I don't know if they go over the weekend or whatever. And what 538 does automatically is they don't put two polls in from the same pollster that have overlapping data. So every day Rasmussen will update, and all of the ones in the history will also update so that there are no overlapping. And they automatically do this.
Gotcha. So today, for instance,
the dates don't overlap.
Yep, got it. So today, the 15th, is showing data from the most recent one, June 10th to the 14th. So that's basically pulling from Thursday, Friday, and Monday. So tomorrow we can expect this to say 11 to 15. Basically, they'll take tomorrow's tracker, which will be data from Friday, Monday, and Tuesday. And then the next one down, instead of being June 7th to 9th, would be June 8th to 10th. They would take the Friday the 11th published data as the second one. Okay.
And you don't have to worry too much about this. The most recent one is
the reason I wanted to sort of dive into the Rasmussen rabbit hole at least a little, one, it being a daily tracker, it means this is an at least daily refresh or adjustment to the 538 number, but also because Rasmussen is one. There may be others, but it's at least one where you can, at least historically, could buy earlier access to the poll. They do have, and I think we've got the page here. Here it is, the subscription options. You can see over on the right there, the Platinum service subscription comes with the Platinum Preview, which gives you an earlier peek at the poll numbers. It runs you $20 a month, but if this is information that the market doesn't have, and if it could cause flipping from one bracket to the other, obviously it could be worth it. PredictIt used to have a Rasmussen specific polling market too, which obviously made this very much worth it. In fact, back in the days when I was doing work for PredictIt, we had to have some conversations with the Rasmussen folks because it seemed early. We kept moving the settlement, or basically the closing, but pre-settlement suspension of the market earlier and earlier and earlier, because it appeared that some traders were getting access to the number while the market was still open. We had thought it was before any publication time of the Rasmussen number, but it apparently was leaking out through first through the platinum subscription, but then it turned out beyond this $20 tier, there was an unpublished tier called Platinum Premium that gave it to you a little bit earlier than that. So I think the number comes out either 9 or 10 a.m., something like that, in terms of the formal publication. They give it out maybe 30, 60 minutes early at that Platinum tier, a little bit earlier for the Platinum Premium tier. I believe that was $50. This is 2019 information from Rasmussen, so this may be different as of today. But it was $50 a month for the Platinum Premium. There also was an unspoken of double secret Platinum tier for $100 a month. That Base looks really upset with me for
It was $200 a month, and we called it Super.
It was $200. Okay,
way
for super Platinum.
That brings us to the dark side.
The earliest it would send that one out was 8:30 a.m. But then they admitted sometimes we send it out a little bit earlier than that. So if you want to get that edge and try and trade it profitably, I would simply call their subscription department and say, what is the most I can pay you, to get it earlier or as early as anyone else? It'll probably be expensive. It's going to be at least a 3-digit number. And again, given that this settlement is not tied solely to Rasmussen, it's to an average, it may wind up not making the difference. But on the occasion when it does make the difference, that could pay for itself. Are any of you all in the room here on any of the secret tiers right now?
Not anymore.
Not anymore. No.
Yeah,
that's brings us to the dark side
for this market, or you want to wait and see, how often it might make the difference.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let's see what kind of volume we can bring in terms of the market and participation. I don't even know that Rasmussen is still offering. Again, Super Plat was just what we called it. I don't even know what it was officially called. I'm not even sure they continue to offer it. It wasn't public. You did have to call and go, I'll pay you this, and you sent it early. I don't know what they'll do anymore. But I don't think anyone subscribes to it anymore because we haven't had cause to do so for well over a year.
Right.
I think
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. That opens up the dark side of these the accusations of insider trading, people like leaking polls for their own gain, like they're the people who were working in the polling firms supposedly trading the markets. I remember people hated RCP because they were so random, but when they would add polls, people were like, "Oh, you guys are 100%, timing these releases to the market, try and like flip it at the last second," which is why 538 is great because, as far as I know, they haven't really been accused of doing that, other than one occasion where the guy was admitting trading on PredictIt, and then he said he wasn't going to do it anymore. But that is another aspect to these markets. Of there's always the risk that someone who works for these polling firms is like, oh, there's a weird shift to this bracket for no real reason. I wonder why that is. Right. Maybe someone who works for the firm is on the site, which. You
never know, but we do know that Rasmussen polls are, or at least were, available for purchase early. And so, if you want to really try and get an edge on this market, I would give them a call and ask them, what it's going to cost, and see how early you can get it, and how small a group it may be that's able to get it that early. Obviously, even if you can get that highest tier, if there's anyone else with access to it, you may also need to have fast fingers to keep up with them and chase those swift market moves. But are any of you guys aware of any other of the pollsters in this list? I mean, we have a number that appear a lot. Morning Consult, obviously, Georgetown, Ipsos, YouGov. Any of these others that you're aware of that offer, premium access that gives you a little sneak peek?
Maybe I should just I'll spill everything I know about this week. How about that?
Perfect.
Just as like an overview. So we have a few weekly polls. So tomorrow is Wednesday, which means we'll get the YouGov Economist poll. That comes out around 9 in the morning, East Coast time. And it's not a big influence poll, not bigly weighted, but that'll be there. Ipsos, I think, is coming out Thursday evenings these days. That's a weekly poll. This is the third week of the month, which means that from the 17th through the 20th, American Research Group will be polling. And they always release the first weekday after the 20th. So they'll be coming on Monday. And they are always good for Democrats. So you can scroll down the history. Their last was like a 57 for Joe. But remember, 538 adjusts all of these to account for House effects. So buyer beware. Make sure you read the methodology. Maybe we can talk about that. And there's also a CBS YouGov. So YouGov, they flirt and date with all kinds of media publications. So they've got their Economist gig that's weekly, but then they'll work with Yahoo sometimes. They'll do a CBS sometimes. So there's a CBS YouGov floating in the wind, and that may be coming tomorrow or later. And that's all I know about this week. And most of the game is identifying that sort of stuff and then waiting for it to show up and reacting to it. If CBS comes this weekend, they release polls Sunday morning at 10:30 a.m., but it could be before that. In fact, I'd probably expect it before that. So that's how I look at it. There are no other pollsters that you can pay for, as far as I know. I mean, you could pay for Gallup at one point, but they don't even release stuff early. Right. And Rasmussen, I don't think Rasmussen's worth it, either Platt or Super Platt at this point. Sometimes maybe if you're right on the border, it could be worth. But I haven't felt the need to go back to that well.
Good. Well, that's very helpful weekly rundown. So appreciate that. So yeah, if you weren't able to catch all that in real time, this will be archived too. So if you want to go back and those are your crib notes from Jipkin on how to play the timing, the schedule of all these polls this week. That's really the kind of awareness that you need to have to sort of see how the shape of this is going to unfold and when these swings are going to happen. But you mentioned too the methodology and House effects and things like that. So just because you see a poll that's about to get added to 538 does not necessarily mean you know how it's going to impact the average, right? They try and correct for the House effect. They try and wait for how good they believe the pollster to be. Again, they downweight for the more frequent pollsters. What else should people keep in mind in terms of the way that the 538 composite number here deviates from just a more simple average like 538 uses, like RCP uses?
I guess what I would do if you see a poll come out, and I would look up the pollster. So, for instance, let's take Rasmussen. Rasmussen comes out, and their number for today was 49 approve, 49 disapprove. And then you'll see a second column, if you can bring up the poll list page, that says adjusted 5243. So that adjusted number is the number that influences the average. And generally, if the adjustment will move every time the average updates, they shift that adjustment a little bit up and down. But it doesn't move that much. So if you see a new Rasmussen, you know that the approved number is probably going to go up 3 points. And if that approved number is above the current average, it's going to pull the average up a little bit. And if it's below, it's going to pull it down. And how much it pulls it up and down depends on the weight of the poll. So there's a column there for weight, and Rasmussen has a middling weight for the most recent one. And that weight is a function of how recent the poll is. So the dates of the poll, the grade of the pollster. So the higher the grade, the more the weight. And then the size of the sample. So the bigger the sample, the bigger the weight. As you scroll down, you can see there's a morning consult that has 2,200 respondents, and it has a very low weight. And then another one that has 15,000 respondents, and it has a much higher weight. So that's basically it. There are people that have figured out the actual math and have reverse engineered the whole black box. I'm not one of them. You can do just fine knowing if it's higher, it's going to go up. If it's lower, it's going to go down. And you develop an intuition for how much it would in either case.
I think that math is on their GitHub if you want to take a stab at it for yourself. See how
on 538 GitHub?
Yeah, they're pretty open about a lot of stuff. Like you can see the JSON with every poll they've ever included for, which is also a good way of looking up when a poll usually drops. Obviously, Chip can give you a pretty good rundown, like these leases out to the first day after the 20th or whatever. But if you just want like the day of the month that the last polls have dropped, you can use the web interface, or you can do that JSON, and that's how a lot of people know like right away when they update 538. They don't wait for the site to update. They just check that JSON over and over again. They have web crawlers that ping it. So there's definitely ways to automate some of this processes if you want to get technical, or you can just know that a poll is dropping and try and find it on Twitter first.
Base, assuming that anyone from PredictIt is watching, I don't think we're getting tweet markets back, but let's assume that they're opening the doors just a little crack here to some of the favorites of the past. What else would you like to see come through that gate? I mean, would you want to see more polling? You want to see generic congressional polling? You want to see, I don't know, what else? What's on your wish list?
Honestly, more legislative markets. We used to have a lot more, will such and such pass? Will it be signed into law? They've done a very good job, actually, recently of vote count markets, specifically in terms of confirmation votes. And last week they did well on the Senate vote count for whatever it was. But legislative markets in general, if we're going to open the doors, let's get back into the business of legislation. I will never forget that in 2015, when I signed on, after receiving multiple ads for PredictIt, the market that finally got me to deposit money was, will there be a gas tax enacted by the end of the year 2015? And I went, you know what? I want to put money behind it. We don't have that type of market much anymore. And especially when you do them in some sort of a reasonable term, 6 months or the balance of the calendar year, they really can bring a lot of excitement. Things can happen and change. They can be somewhat sleepy for a time and then pop. But pairing passage and legislative markets with then specific vote count markets really gives you a 1-2 punch of common activity. If we're going to open the gates back to these other things, obviously, I would like tweet markets back. I'm obviously very excited about polling, and any iteration of polling, the more the merrier. I love them. But that would be my wish list.
How'd you do on that gas tax market? I just pulled it up, the archive from it. And this is a sign of the times. That market, which was relatively active for then standards, did a total of 10,000 shares over its lifetime of the market. How'd you do? Were you on the right side of it?
I was in the end, but not how I wanted to be. The ad itself was misleading, or maybe I misread it. I don't know. I thought the question was simply, will the price of gas move at a certain point? And I went, this is ridiculous. I'm going in. And then I went and read the rules and said, oh, hold on. I don't follow legislation like this. I have no idea. PredictIt was the birth for me of beginning to follow politics this closely. So I don't remember. I'm sure at the end I made some small amount of money, but I started with $25. I did nothing. So maybe I made $3. Wonderful. Great. I think you might be on mute. I can't hear you.
Oh, I was muted. I was saying, Jip, what kind of markets do you want to see come back if you were pulling all the levers?
I mean, obviously, I give a shout out to tweets, my baby, my brainchild. But I don't have any faith that they'll come back. Honestly, I'll give a credit to, I think they put out a job posting earlier this year for someone to help them make markets that were relevant and timely. And I think they've done a pretty good job of that. This was always going to be the down season in between election cycles. We sort of burned off a lot of the Biden cash early on this year. It was crazy, but they've still kept up making new vote count markets every week. Someone's following the Senate pretty closely. I hope we get more House action. They just changed the rule now. They're not going to do voting in waves. So there's going to be more cases where people don't vote by the end of a House vote. So that could be really fun, because I've been really annoyed with how it's been going currently. You don't get that is it going to end or not excitement. But I don't have big feedback. I think even to Base's point, we do have stuff on the corporate tax rate. We've had the minimum wage market. So like some of that is there. More never hurts, and I think PredictIt's doing a pretty reasonable job within the confines that they have. And I think the thing I'm really excited about with polling markets coming back, I don't know why they went away. It was about a year ago, but if they've come back, I assume it means something good about their communication with the regulatory powers that be, and that's really exciting from a long-term platform stability and market variability point of view.
All right, Crunchwrap, I think we're up against a hard stop in a couple of minutes, but parting thoughts, advice?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Jipkin. I thought the markets have been really good that they've added recently. The New York City markets, like they've had some great markets there. Adams, Yang, all that. Maybe some. I guess we're a little late in the game, but some polling markets for that could have been fun. And it's rare that an event like this happens where an election is going to come, and really no one knows who's going to win. It's pretty wide open right now, and right up to the buzzer. I thought they did a great job with the Peruvian markets. Maybe they could add some Olympics markets. Like, is the Olympics going to get canceled? Like, again, a little late for that one, but generally speaking, I think they've done a really great job of keeping the markets interesting, even though we're in the off election years. I was worried when Trump lost that we'd all be predicted to be dead within 6 months, but thankfully that seems to have not been the case, and they found a way to stay relevant in the Biden era.
Indeed, and as you said, New York is really interesting series of markets too. Forgotten how many are up there now, but you got even down ballot stuff like comptroller. But for the main event for the mayoral primary coming up on the 22nd. Gosh, that's just a week from today. That's really coming up. There's obviously a lot of action in terms of who's going to win, who's going to come in second. Will the first round leader be the ultimate winner? How many rounds of retabulation, reallocation will it take in this first ranked choice election? And I want to remind folks too, tomorrow we're doing a special episode all about New York, bringing in a couple of ranked choice voting experts, Paul Butler from ranked.vote and Logan Phillips from racetothewh.com, which has a very cool visualizer and simulator for the New York City primary, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about that. How many rounds of retabulation will it go market that's befuddling everyone, yours truly very much included. So be sure to tune in tomorrow at 1 p.m. live when we will go over that. In the meantime, I want to thank our absolute all-star panel today, Jason Pipkin, Base Level, and Crunchwrap Supreme. This has been really very insightful. I'm going to go back over and watch the archive myself to try and re-equip myself with the various tools, strategies, and schedules that you all laid out here today. Maybe we can get you guys back maybe next week, maybe following week as this series starts to take root a little bit. Hopefully volumes will pick up and we'll sort of see where we are, see if we have any updated strategies to apply and try and make some money. But thank you all for joining us very much. Thanks everyone at home for watching us. New traders, once again, don't forget to go claim your free $25 at predictit.org/promo/oldbull25. Find us on Twitter at OldBullTV. Let us know your questions and any requests for future market coverage. Thanks again so much for watching. Happy trading, and we will see you tomorrow.